Hey, Big Bulls, welcome back to another edition of Bullseye, and we got three cracking stories for you today.
So we talk about three reasons why BSE shares have fallen 20% this week. Is SpiceJet finally taking off from its troubles? And India VIX's calmness amidst the storm.
All right, so Saloni, let's start with BSE. Its shares have fallen 20% in the past 5 days. That's a big fall. And so I know that, okay, it's a stock exchange. The markets are looking a little low today. The overall Sensex Nifty, it's cracking a little. So investors and traders are also going to be a little shy of trading and investing. So that's going to affect a stock exchange like BSE. But I'm sure there's more to this than just that bit of the story, right? What's going on?
There is. I'll actually lay down three reasons as to why that's happening. All these updates that came through the week, right? So firstly is to, of course, keep up with the competition, right? NSE recently changed when their contracts will expire. Now, this is obviously for the derivatives contracts that they have, right? So major of their contracts will now expire on the last Monday of the month, they have changed from the last Thursday of the month, right? Now remember that NSE is already a bigger player in the derivative space, right? It's even like the world's largest derivative exchange. But BSE also has been trying to catch up, expand its footprint in the space, right? For instance, its daily derivatives turnover have jumped from just under 1% in FY23 to now about 26% this fiscal, right? So now with NSE moving its expiry date just a day before Sensex, weekly expiry that happens on Tuesday, that could affect BSE's trading volumes because this tends to spikes on Monday and Tuesday as well, right?
Right. So the competition in the derivative space is basically heating up.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So second is a brokerage downgrade, right? SEBI recently proposed new rules that could limit how much proprietary traders, the ones who trade with their own firm, right? How much they can actually do in the market. Now, this matters a lot for BSE because these traders actually are super important for them. They make up about 70% of their daily trading volume as well. So if these traders start doing less because of the regulatory, proposal, it could hurt BSE's earnings and growth, even if its options and F&O part is actually trying to grow.
Right. So traders and investors in BSE shares are reacting to Goldman Sachs's rating downgrades over here.
Yes.
Okay.
Now third is the legal troubles. A Mumbai court recently ordered authorities to file an FIR against former SEBI chairperson Madhvi Puri Buch and also two BSE officials over alleged things that went wrong when granting permissions for a company to list in 1994. Even though both the accused parties have said that they weren't involved in these roles back then, right, and they have nothing to do with this, it's still stirring up that drama and obviously adding more to the stock's volatility that's already been happening this week.
Right. So it's definitely a lot happening for BSE, and it certainly looks like it's tough times for the stock exchange.
Certainly. So for the first time in 10 years, the company is finally net worth positive. Now, this is what SpiceJet's chairman Ajay Singh said while announcing Q3 and Q2 results last week.
Yeah. So the thing is, because that he said that he had to say that because SpiceJet has been going through a torrid time, right? It's got ongoing legal battles over unpaid dues. Half of its planes were grounded. Not many thought the airline would actually survive, right? And let's face it, running an airline is a tough business, right? It's costly because you've got rising fuel prices always to contend with, and we all know that crude oil is always very volatile. Not to forget that the competition from budget airlines, right? The low-cost carriers are always in the mix, and that puts pressure on each other because everyone's trying to cut costs, cut prices, and compete with each other. There's always pilot shortages, that's a problem. And all of this have even led to, just you can count the number of airline shutdowns in India, right? Starting from back in the Deccan days, which then Kingfisher took over and then Kingfisher shut down, right? So there's a lot of things happening in the airline space constantly. So despite air traffic actually growing, there's a lot of, let's say, setbacks for the airline industry.
And I guess even for SpiceJet, the story has not been different, right? Because it also came to very close to settling down in 2014 due to financial distress as well.
Yeah, I did. And then there was a pandemic also,
Right.
After that, which hurt all the airlines. Now, Indigo bounced back fairly quickly, but SpiceJet had a bit of problems. They had actually defaulted on their payments, including to the aircraft leasers, right? So they actually don't own the airlines outright. So they lease it from others and they have to pay dues. So some of them, when they did not receive the dues from SpiceJet, they actually went to court They took SpiceJet to court and said, hey, these guys are not able to pay us, right? But then, again, quoting Mr. Ajay Singh again, he's tried to keep it afloat and he's actually said, ours is an airline that refuses to die.
Of course, with those so many fundraising efforts, I'm sure he's trying to, keep it all together. But what about the latest numbers, as I mentioned about Q3 and Q2?
Right. So let's take a look at that, right? So for December 2024, that quarter, they reported 26 crores in profits. Now, this was a big turnaround from the 300 crores of losses last year. Now, how did that come about? One part of it was there was this mega fundraise from qualified institutional investors that they did that was worth 3,000 crores. A large part of this 3,000 crores actually went into repaying a lot of the dues. So whether it was settlements to the the companies that leased aircraft from, or employee settlements, a lot of the money was used to settle those dues, right? So that actually helped them to even go back and renegotiate some of the leases, because now people were seeing some positivity. So people were like, hey, maybe SpiceJet is going to come back. So people are willing to renegotiate some of the leases, and that allowed SpiceJet to unground some of the planes which were just lying in the at the airports and get them flying again. So that kind of happened.
So is SpiceJet finally taking off? Is it the start of the turnaround?
Well, it's too early to say. It's just one instance that we are seeing over here. Let me again pull out some numbers with regard to the market share. In 2014, its market share was 17.4%. But right now, its market share is just 3%, right? It's got other competition also in the mix with folks like Akasa Air, right? So there are rivals coming in. But in the meanwhile, if you look at Indigo, Indigo's market share has gone from 32% in 2018 to 65% now. So that's a huge behemoth that it has to really compete with.
So it looks like the road to normalcy is still not there for SpiceJet yet.
It looks like it's going to be hard. All right, Saloni, so let's talk about the markets as a whole. The Nifty 50, India's benchmark index, is down 7% for this year. But if you look at something called the India VIX, or the volatility index, which is the fear gauge, it's not really showing up in that VIX index.
That's right. Even though the market's been obviously in the whole sell-off movement, the VIX has actually dropped just about 6% this year and is hanging around 13.8 points. Now, this is pretty low for that index.
So break it down for me, Saloni. What exactly is the VIX, and the number that you mentioned, what can our viewers actually glean from that?
Right. So VIX index obviously is called the fear index, with the volatility index that you mentioned for the stock market in India, right? It shows how much people think the stock market will move up or down in the next month. The higher the VIX, the more movement people expect from the market, right? Like those big swings and movements. And the lower it is, the more people think that things will obviously stay down. Now, this is calculated by looking at the prices of Nifty options, kind of like bets on where the Nifty index will go in the future.
Right.
And these are when they're traded on the NSE, right? And they look at the best buy and sell price for options that are near term, usually for the next month. In short, it measures how much people are confident or nervous about the market movements, right? So it's definitely always shown in points and not percentages. So when I mentioned that point and I said it's low, so the VIX usually ranges from 15 to 35. If it's around 15 or below, that means that the market is going to be calm. But if it's beyond 35, it shows that the market's more unstable and it's more likely to move a lot.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you also is that there is a sort of an inverse correlation between the stock market index and the VIX. So when the Nifty is down and it's looking slightly weak, the VIX is likely to be higher.
So that's right. Inverse correlation is something that happens with them. But right now, that's not happening, right? They are both falling together. Now, this is obviously unusual from the history. But when I was trying to read as to why this is happening, I came across this quote from Subhada Rao, who is the founder of Quant Eco Research. And she told Bloomberg that the VIX staying stable suggests that India is less vulnerable to all these global trade disruptions, showing that how we have these diverse trading partners out there. This might be one of the reasons why the fear is in check, and even if, when the market is struggling.
So I'm also hearing some positivity there, which means that probably the road to recovery for the Indian markets is not that too far along.
That's the hope for sure.
All right. Well, that's it from us this week, folks. We hope you have enjoyed this edition of Bullseye. If you liked the video, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so that you know when the next episode drops next Thursday. We'll see you there.